When I was in high school, my childhood home caught fire. I was woken up in the middle of the night by the sound of the big picture window in our front room shattering from the heat of the flames. I woke my family, grabbed the dog, and we escaped. Thankfully, the thick brick walls were strong enough to keep the flames from penetrating the home before we got outside. Once we were outside and all bodies were accounted for, we called 911, and the fire department arrived promptly to save most of the house as well as the belongings inside of it from going up in flames. It will hopefully remain a once-in-a-lifetime experience, but my family home was saved thanks to a combination of bravery and tax dollars. Now, people owe taxes. Growing up, some of the most consistently aired gripes around the dinner table were about taxes. Taxes were always too high. Paying taxes is a near universal experience, and in the eyes of many, a negative one. Taxes are a combination of a lot of things people find unpleasant. Taxes are characterized by a large amount of paperwork, surrender of funds, and no instantaneous receipt of services. For many, paying taxes is motivated by the fear of repercussions of not paying. I think that's unfortunate. Now hear me out. All the negatives are true, but recognize that we've only seen half the balance. Taxes are a fact of life. We're stuck paying them, but I think we should consider why we do. It is much easier to believe in the benevolence of taxes if we accept the following truths. United, we can accomplish more than as individuals. Organization increases productivity. Governments exist to fulfill responsibilities when others are unwilling. And society cares about the welfare of its members. People are, at their core, benevolent. By accepting these truths, we are headed down the path to accepting taxes as necessary to generate benefits to society. Now, every project requires resources. Consider, for example, firefighting. It required trained individuals equipped with the right tools to put out the flames destroying my childhood home. Acquiring fire trucks, ladders, and hoses, and training the firefighters to be effective requires both time and money. The capital costs of staffing and equipping a fire station would be too high for most individuals to afford. But in most cases, every individual wants to have access to the service. In order to outfit a fire department, a larger body that can afford the capital costs must form. Now, even if my family had the type of capital required to build a fire station on their own, it would be extremely expensive to put out one fire. In fact, you can imagine it would cost more to buy the trucks, build the water system that feeds the hydrants, and hire and train the firefighters than it would for my family to buy a new home. The fixed costs are simply too high. On our own, we'd be better off buying a new home than buying a fire department to save the old one. By forming a collective to buy the fire station, we could use it to fight all sorts of fires, each at a fraction of the cost of the capital itself. Sure, we'd still have to pay the crew for their time and replace worn equipment as it wore out. But the cost of putting out each additional fire is still a smaller share of the truck, the ladders, and the hose. However, even as we reduce the cost of fighting a single fire, the monetary cost doesn't really reflect the value of saving a home. Sure, as a house, mine was worth not much more or less than any of the other houses on the street. But to me and my family, it was a home. Saving the house did more than retain resale value. It protected the intrinsic value of the experiences we had shared and the stability it provided us. Saving our home provided us with peace of mind. Now, peace of mind is a very subjective thing. Peace of mind is insanely difficult to price. For my brother, the sentimental value of our home was of great importance. He would have considered the home to be worth far more than its retail price. In contrast, my sister is not enamored with things. She loves people, but shows minimal concern for possessions. If I was to ask each of them what they thought saving the house was worth, their answers would be wildly different. That makes it very hard for a private fire station to operate. How can they possibly have their prices low enough for my sister to buy while also making a profit at prices my brother's willing to pay? It becomes very murky and often drives off private competition. People rely on governments to provide services such as fire stations because private markets fail. Again, for my sister, our home was not worth nearly as much as the people inside it. When the fire department let us know that the house fire had not been an accident, that it had been started by a stranger, it was important to her that justice could be pursued so that we and others in the community could be protected. One of the ways the government can provide services like policing and firefighting to everyone fairly, despite contrasting preferences from parties about which service is more important, is by setting taxes based on the preferences of society as a collective rather than those of the individual. If people prefer policing at 2 to 1, then we can allocate 2/3 of the tax dollars to policing and 1/3 to firefighting. Of course, the government does not only provide two services, and the ability to pool resources of individuals to exercise controlled power is not limited to protection services. Governments can use tax dollars to fund all sorts of goods and services for the public. Tax dollars pay for schools and road, policing and fire services, and also healthcare and legal systems. But they are also used to pay for special services like museums, community centers, and national parks. Plenty of individuals are able to enjoy these services that could not possibly afford to create them on their own. One of the greatest benefits that we derive from these services is an increased level of equality in society. By ensuring that firefighting, policing, and healthcare are made accessible to everyone, we establish order that provides the framework for society as we know it. Can you imagine a world where whether or not your home burnt down was based on your ability to pay to prevent it? Where your freedom wasn't determined by guilt, but rather endowment? Your health determined by your personal net worth? That world lies in direct conflict with the notion of equal opportunity. It should be a priority to each and every member of society that each member of society have a chance to reach their full potential and attain happiness. You should pay your taxes, not begrudgingly, but contentedly, knowing that the money is going to be spent growing the wealth available to you and your fellow citizens. Government goods are those which are enjoyed by many and paid for in fractions by even more. Although your house isn't on fire, does having a police service to discourage destructive behavior not instill confidence when you make a purchase? Does knowing that taxes keep a ready fire hose prepared for the worst not allow you to sleep better at night? Does having access to education, clean running water, and a reliable healthcare system not add value to your life? Maybe they don't, in which case a nomadic lifestyle away from civilization would be to your preference. However, for most they do. In these cases, paying taxes allow us to access a wealth of services that we cannot afford to acquire on our own. Taxes are not evil. Taxes merely suffer from an optics problem. Taxes are collected with the goal of bettering society. Taxes fund government production of goods and services demanded by society. Goods and services that private markets will not produce on their own. Governments depend on taxes to increase equity in society. Taxes result in more being made available to many for less. So, what's not to like about taxes?